Okay, let's try that again. Sorry, my sound was off. Good evening, everyone. You're in the spotlight with Brian Gardner for this Tuesday, January the 16th, 2018. Good to have you all here for our first of two shows this week. Um, First off, let me apologize for the quality of the video stream here because it's not good. You can see it's very grainy. So obviously you know that maybe the weather and such is playing a role here. That happens. It's the way it goes when you do podcasting like this, so just bear with us here. Hopefully, it'll improve as we go on. With that being said, before I get into anything more, let me, as always, remind you all of the ways in which you can interact and contribute to the show. Have your voice heard by emailing us at itspotlight401@gmail.com. You can also follow us and tweet us at itspotlight401. Please remember to use the hashtag itspotlight401 for anything you tweet regarding the show. And Facebook, to search for In the Spotlight 401 on Facebook, and then make sure that you like our fan page once you find it, and then you can follow us and all that kind of stuff. So, all right, so on air late. I don't, for those that might be in the East Coast, you know that there's some weather. So if you were out and about tonight, you know that the roads took you a little while to kind of navigate. So that's why I'm here late. But I'm also here late because, as you can see, there's some issues here going on. So again, just bear with us here tonight with the technical issues here. I'm fairly convinced that we're going to have this on and off as long as there's some kind of wind and as long as there's some kind of snow. I've noticed that with this setup that sometimes you just get the grainy look and the sound issues when you have some weather going on. It's not. I mean, we've had worse weather, no doubt, but it is what it is. So just bear with us here tonight, and hopefully everything goes as well as we can make it. All right, and also I want to apologize for my voice too. I'm a little hoarse. I've been having some. I mean, I have sinus issues all the time, but I'm in one of those states today where my voice is kind of like it'll trail off, and you got like the frog in your throat thing going on. So just bear with me on that. My voice might be lower than usual, so just bear with me as opposed to the usual high tones that I exude. So just bear with me here tonight. All right, so this is our first of two this week. It's a pretty normal week for us, after last week with the nominations on Thursday. So tonight we'll just do some sports, some wrestling. There's a couple of things in the show description that we'll talk briefly about that I didn't put in there. We're going to do college basketball as we always do. We're going to do some NFL, look back at the Divisional Playoff, look ahead to Conference Championship weekend. A couple other little things, an NBA thing that one of our fans thought I should talk about, and I will. And then we'll do some wrestling. That'll be it. So it's not going to be a lot tonight. We'll also do a little baseball too, the Christian Yelich thing, because that's interesting. So we'll do that. We haven't done baseball much because it's been a slow off season. So, after all the excitement of the first couple weeks. And then again, we'll do some wrestling stuff. Thursday, entertainment, box office beat, TV highlights. We'll bring our film picks of the week back as well. We may or may not do something else yet. I'm not sure. I usually by now I've made my decision, but I haven't yet. It really just all depends on whether I feel like it's something that should wait or whether we should just do it. This Thursday. I also will comment on the Golden Globes and the Critics' Choice. I was going to comment on the Golden Globes last week, but we didn't have enough time with the nominations and everything. So I'll fulfill that promise. I'll also talk about the Critics' Choice stuff as well. As we approach the Oscar nominations next week, we'll kind of give an insight into that too. So we'll do that on Thursday. So with all that, we might not need to do anything else, but we'll see. So that's what's going to be happening this week. Next week, we'll be back again with two shows. Tuesday will be a little bit of sports and a little bit of entertainment because Thursday will be an all wrestling show. So Tuesday, we'll do our usual sports stuff. And we'll look back at Conference Championship weekend NFL. We'll do a quick little look ahead to the Super Bowl. We won't do a full Super Bowl preview because we'll wait till the next week to do that. And then any other sports stuff, we have to do college basketball, that kind of stuff. And then we'll also do some entertainment, box office, TV highlights, all that stuff. Because Thursday will be we won't do any wrestling on Tuesday because Thursday will be all wrestling, as we will preview WWE's Royal Rumble event. Obviously, we'll go over all the matches and do all that kind of stuff on Thursday of next week. So again, as always, for our wrestling shows, if you have any questions or comments you'd like to submit before, of course, you can do that during the show next Thursday as well. But if you have any questions or comments, you can submit before or during the show next Thursday. And the week after that, we will have the Film Awards, and so that'll be another special episode. And I think that's on the 31st. We're doing on Tuesday this time around. And then that Thursday show will be like our sports entertainment, like just like next Tuesday will be sports entertainment combo edition of the show. And do all our usual stuff then. And then after that, we'll have to see what the schedule is going to be like, because once we head into February, things get a little dicey for me. But I'm working on formulating a plan. But I haven't decided the particulars yet. Because usually in March we take a hiatus, and we'll still do that with NCAA tournament and everything. But February it's gonna be a little different around here than normal. So I'll explain more about that as we get closer. All right. So with all that being said, my co-host is gonna be running late too, I can imagine, because of with the weather and everything. So we'll give him a little bit of time. So while we're giving him some time, I can get started on some things, and I'll start with the NFL, because that's stuff that he don't like to talk about. So we'll do the NFL right now. We'll look back. I've always said this. You all know. Most of you know this, unless you're a new fan or a new viewer or listener or whatever. Wild card weekend and divisional playoff weekend are the best of the NFL playoffs. Why? Because you got 4 games each weekend. You got 2 games on Saturday, 2 games on Sunday. That means more opportunity for good games. Once you get down to conference championship, you only got 2 games, and they're both on Sunday. If both games are a clunker, then it feels like the weekend's a wash. Same with the Super Bowl. The Super Bowl's a clunker. Well, okay, maybe you still have the commercials and such, but it still feels like a clunker. At least when you got the wild card weekend, divisional weekend, you got 4 games. Chances are not all 4 games are going to be bad. You're going to find some enjoyment at least one of the games. So it doesn't feel like the whole weekend was a waste for football fans. So that's why, those are the 2 weekends that I think are, the playoffs at their best. And in honesty, if you think about it, once you get beyond divisional playoff weekend, football's over. Because you're only going to have football Sunday from 3 o'clock to 9 for a 6-hour period, as opposed to what you've had all season long. So it's kind of like a reality, smacking you in the face, like, hey, football season's over. Now this year that might not hurt that many people, because this year for many was a lackluster, at least in the NFL. College people found enjoyment, but in the NFL this year was not a good year for the NFL fans. Ratings went down. There was a lot of controversy. We all know that. We talked about it. So I'm not going to belabor that point. But still, for most pure football fans, this weekend's, it's the realization that you're coming to the end. So after what was a pretty decent wild card weekend, the NFL got very lucky this weekend with really 3 out of the 4 games being very entertaining games. The only game that wasn't was the Saturday night game. And honestly, folks, I told you, there was a lot of people going into that game, and I'm talking about the Patriots and the Titans. There was a lot of people going into that game that for some reason thought Tennessee had a chance. No disrespect to Tennessee. They did not have a chance. Not only because they're going into New England, which, they're not going to lose to a team like Tennessee in New England. It's not going to happen. I know what the Chiefs did in week 1 against them, but that was week 1. This is the playoffs, okay? And Kansas City, I know Tennessee beat them. Kansas City was so much better than Tennessee. I don't know what we talked about Kansas City, how disappointed we all are in them. Okay? But that's besides the point. Tennessee is not even, I mean, they played very well early. I know what people are talking about, the running game and their ability, to stop the run. I understand all that. There were some things that Tennessee could do that could cause some issues for New England. I get that. But there was more that New England could do to cause issues for Tennessee. And in the end, that's all that matters for a team like New England. And you saw that in spades on Saturday night. That game was over quick. Once New England got going, it wasn't even fair. So there's not much you can talk about. That game just got, again, I said it. It was going to be I felt like it was going to be a blowout, and it was. And New England won the game. And that was pretty much a predictable result, and it was an expected result. So there's not much you can talk about and about that game. And the reason why I'm bringing up that game first, because there's not much to talk about. The first game between the Eagles and the Falcons on Saturday, and then the 2 games on Sunday, you have far more that you can talk about there. And let's talk about that first game on Saturday, the Eagles and the Falcons. I told you, look, that game was a worrisome game if you're an Eagles fan. Number one, you don't have Carson Wentz, so the Eagles have been very vulnerable since then. Foles is a very good backup, and a lot of teams he'd be starting with. He's still a sketchy quarterback. He takes a lot of risks. He turns over the ball quite often. There's a lot of risks for Foles at quarterback. But the Eagles are a good enough team where they can find ways to win with him at quarterback, and you're seeing that now. But, you know, you go against a team like the Falcons, who the week prior looked like they found their mojo. You look like the Falcons. They look like the Falcons of old. That Falcons team that got to the Super Bowl and had New England on the ropes in the Super Bowl last year. They look like they found themselves again in that game. In previous game, and then they come in. So they came in with a lot of momentum in that game. They came in with a lot of momentum, and the Falcons played a really solid game. I think when you look at that game, the one thing you're going to take away from is this: they did the job on defense. And look, it was a low-scoring game, and that benefited the Eagles, obviously, because the Eagles needed to make it low-scoring because it takes less pressure. It takes more pressure off of Foles. I mean, like I said, the Falcons played a very good game, but ultimately, you're going to look at the Falcons' offense and say what happened, because even though I thought at times they moved the ball okay, they let the Eagles dictate the tone. That's the one thing the Falcons don't do. We always talk about how fundamentally sound they are, and how in recent years maybe they got a little bit more aggressive, which has helped them. But at the same time, they don't let you dictate the game. I mean, that doesn't mean that because they let that. It doesn't mean that because they do that they win the game, obviously. But they're the kind of team that's like, you know what, we're not going to let you, you know, tell us what to do. We're not going to let you decide what this game's going to be. We're going to play this game straight up. We're going to try to play the best football we can. We're going to try to win the game. The Falcons let the Eagles make it a grinded out, low-scoring affair. And that was going to always benefit Philly, because Atlanta wants it to be a little bit more open. They have explosive weapons in Julio Jones and Devontae Freeman. They have explosive players. They want it to be that kind of game. They want it to be a wide open game because they feel more comfortable with that. They let the Eagles slow it down. They let the Eagles make it a more grinded out kind of game. And ultimately, Atlanta's offense just wasn't up to snuff in that game to do it. They just never could get themselves going consistently enough. And that's been the story for the Atlanta Falcons all season, was they just weren't consistent. Whether it was game to game or within the games themselves, they just were not as consistent as they were last year. And, sometimes that's the kind of years you have. Sometimes that's just the way it goes. So Atlanta suffers a tough defeat, and the Eagles just barely get by, just do enough to get by. And, look, and it does. There's no style points here. And once you're in the playoffs in any sport, you just find a way to survive and advance. That's really all you have to do: survive and advance. And that's what the Eagles did. They found a way to survive and advance. It wasn't pretty. Offensively, they did not play a good game. Atlanta really wasn't doing much on defense to make them have that really bothered them. They just couldn't get themselves going. Foles had some issues, and it was what it was. Their defense stepped up, much like Atlanta's did as well in a lot of ways. Really, it was a game of the defenses. But again, I felt like both teams played a decent enough game given the feel of the game. Ultimately, though, Eagles just did a little bit more offensively in the circumstances that were there in Atlanta. And look, the Eagles have been more consistent, whether it was with Carson Wentz or without Carson Wentz anyway this year. That was really the difference in the kind of season a team like the Eagles had versus the kind of season a team like the Falcons had, where the Falcons just were not consistent within the games or game to game, while the Eagles were, regardless of who was at quarterback. So that ends up, these games end up, playoff games, championship games can end up being a microcosm of your season. And this was a microcosm of Atlanta's season and the Eagles season. It showed you why the Eagles are where they are and why the Falcons are where they are. So the Eagles advance and move on. And then we cut to Sunday, which featured two really entertaining games, but entertaining in different ways. The first game, which, everybody thought there's no way Jacksonville can do to Pittsburgh what they did way back in week 5, especially in Pittsburgh. To do it again in Pittsburgh, which they did the first time around, is this, Plus, if you look at Jacksonville, they did not look great against Buffalo the previous week. Now, granted, Buffalo's defense enforced their will on them, all right, and made it that kind of game. But still, Jacksonville's got Blake Bortles at quarterback. They've been able to have the kind of season that they've had despite Blake Bortles. Give Blake credit. He hasn't had a terrible year, but you've seen Blake is just there because they don't have a better option. It's just the bottom line. Because if that team had a better quarterback, that team probably would have been a 1 or 2 seed in the AFC, no doubt about it. They got a good enough defense, and they got a good enough running game to do that. So, you go into this game thinking there's no way that the Steelers could let this happen in their own building. Now, the Steelers made what many people call one of the cardinal sins in sports. You look past a team that's no slouch, okay? Even if the team, even if Jacksonville wasn't very good, even if they barely made the playoffs, you never look past the team. You don't go the whole week talking about the team you may play the week after. And I know that they're your rival, and I know you want revenge and Harrison and all this other stuff. And the media has helped it along too. The media has been hyping up Steelers, Patriots for weeks now, or even before the season started. That's what we're going to go again. That's what we're going to do. It was assumed. It's like the Warriors and the Cavs in the NBA. Everybody just assumes. It doesn't mean it's going to always happen. You can't look past the team that's in front of you. And Jacksonville used that as fuel. That's all they heard day to day all week was how Pittsburgh was talking about the Patriots. And the Steelers after the game claimed that they didn't do that. They did do that. They're in denial about it. They did do that. If you look at any of the quotes, you look at the media before the game, that's all they talked about was the Patriots. Jacksonville used that as more fuel. In addition to the fact that people were doubting them. And they came out there and look, to me, this is weird because I know the game got close. I know the Steelers made a hell of a run to come back in the game. And look, they were going to do that. They just weren't going to lie down, okay? But to me, this game was won in the first half. This game was won in the first quarter when Jacksonville came out and got up 21-0. And then got up to, what was it, 28-7 or whatever it was. That's when they won this game because they gave themselves such an early lead and gave the Steelers such a big hold that even when the Steelers put it up, got it to within a touchdown and made this game a close game because, look, really, the Steelers eventually got this game where they wanted to. They got it to be an offensive light show. That's what they wanted. That's what they're comfortable. Remember, the Steelers defense is not what it once was. They're not a defensive-oriented team. They got Le'Veon Bell. They got Antonio Brown. They got Ben Roethlisberger. They got an offense that can put up points in a hurry. They want to play a wide-open kind of game. This is not the Steelers of old. Jacksonville doesn't want to do that. They don't have the kind of quarterback to do that. They got a good running game, but that's all they got. They want it to be a more low-scoring affair. All right, even though they put up 28 points in the first half, that was because they took advantage of the Steelers' mistakes and they got in front of the Steelers and took advantage of what they were given to them. So it was a very odd thing to see the Jaguars do what they did so early on offensively. Like I said, though, the Steelers eventually started putting points up on the board and making it the kind of game that they wanted it to be. And that's when things got dicey for Jacksonville. But you give Jacksonville all the credit in the world because they stood their ground. They got through the storm. They put more points up there. And even though the Steelers kept coming, they kept coming too. They kept punching back. That's what you do when the other team punches. You punch back. That's how you win these games. If you're a young, inexperienced team like Jacksonville is, and you've never been in this situation before, and you're against a team that has been in this situation before. If they're going to come at you, you come right back. That's what you got to do. They put their foot back on the gas, which is hard to do. Sometimes you take your foot off the gas, proverbial gas, and you can't do it again. Sometimes you get lucky and you're able to. And they found a way to do it. They found a way to get the gears going again, and they found a way to get the points on the board, even though their defense really wasn't that good for maybe the midway point of the second half to the rest of the game. That's worrisome for Jacksonville because we know the Patriots can put up points. So their defense has to be better. Their defense needs to be what it was in that first quarter. Otherwise, they're going to have some trouble. They can't. That's their bread and butter. They can't get away from it. They can't expect to score 40 points on New England this week. It's not going to be the same deal. I think in a lot of ways this match up good with Pittsburgh, but they can't let this happen again. They have to tighten up the defense because they ain't going to be able to do what they did against the Patriots like they did the Steelers. Like I said, though, they found ways to score and keep the Steelers at bay. And they found a way to win the game. And look, Pittsburgh, yes, they gave them plenty of bulletin board material. That didn't help. But in reality, I know Pittsburgh's defense isn't what it once was, but, man, they have to find a way to make stops. Their defense was atrocious in this game. They're better than that. I mean, offensively, you can't complain when you score over 40 points. You for the most part, they got off to a rough start. Maybe that's because they had the bye and there was a little bit of rust. We know that sometimes can happen. But realistically, when their offense came alive and they put 40 points on the board, that's enough to win the game. Your defense just didn't do its job. Neither did Jacksonville's for 3 of the 4 quarters, but Jacksonville got out to enough of a lead to prevent themselves from going under. And they made sure that every time Pittsburgh punched, they punched back late. So, really what this came down to me was the Steelers just not being able to do enough defensively to shut down a Jacksonville team that really should never come close to scoring 40 points on any team. And to have Blake Bortles do what he did in this game when he's not, God bless him. Blake Bortles is not that kind of quarterback. For him to have had that kind of game against you, your defense didn't do its job. So that's really what it comes down to is Pittsburgh. I do think they didn't take them seriously. I think, and it's funny because they blew them out in Pittsburgh back in week 5. You would think that they want revenge. Clearly, that wasn't as much of a motivating factor as seeing the Patriots the week after. So, there was, again, they did not take Jacksonville seriously, and their defense was terrible. That's really what it comes down to. So Pittsburgh goes home. It's very disappointing for them, and Jacksonville gets this shocking win, and Doug Marrone and the Jacksonville Jaguars in the AFC title game. For Jacksonville, it's the first time since 1999, their 3rd time overall. So, great game, a lot of offense, more offense than you probably would have thought there would be, at least for both teams, in terms of total offense, and ends up being a very entertaining game right down the stretch with Pittsburgh making the late comeback, and, ends up being a great game. And then lastly, we have the 4th game on Sunday, 4th game for the weekend, the 2nd game on Sunday, which ended up being a classic that, people are going to look back on. People are going to look back at this game between the Vikings and the Saints as one of the best playoff games of all time and one of the best endings of all time, because it's been a long time since we had an ending like that. We used to be treated to them quite often. I think it's probably the last time we had it was the Patriots Seahawks Super Bowl a couple years ago. I think was probably the last time we had an ending like that. It's good for the NFL. It's good for the sport, but and look, every so often you get a game. Sometimes you get a game that people are going to look back on, and it's a game that it was good from start to finish. Sometimes a game that had a great second half. Maybe the first half wasn't so hot. Sometimes the game that just had a good final few minutes and good overtime, This is that kind of game. Look, the first couple quarters were not – the first half was not great. Minnesota was dominating the Saints on both sides of the ball. They were having their way. They were finding ways to score. They got out in front early, kind of like what Jacksonville did to the Steelers. The Saints just couldn't get anything done against what is a really, really good Vikings defense, probably the best in the NFL if I have anything to say about it. They know how to shut down the run. They effectively make you make big plays on them, but then they limit your big plays because they're very good in coverage. So they're a tough team to get opportunities to score against. And you might get into the red zone, but boy, they can shut you down once you get there. So they did their thing in the first half, and the Saints just made some very big adjustments. Some of their big playmakers started doing their thing in the second half. They have a lot of good young playmakers, especially on offense. They found ways to get it done. They get themselves back in the game, and then you got this good back and forth in the 4th quarter, which was just tremendous. And you're thinking the Saints got the game won. And I think everybody in the building thought the Saints had the game won. Some of the play calling was a little weird. You're thinking, well, there's no way that Keenum can get this done. You give Case Keenum credit because he showed a lot of poise for a journeyman quarterback. He's done that all year, but he's shown a lot of poise in this game. It gives you a good feeling about him going forward. Even when things weren't great for him and for the team, he stayed poised, and he did a good job there in the pocket. And that last play, look, that's one of those plays that you're going to look at and you're going to go, well, the defender made a critical mistake. If the defender does not make that mistake, okay, if he just stays in front of it, doesn't try to go for the big, play, goes for the legs, whatever. He doesn't do what he did, stays in front of him, he tackles him, the game's over. That's very true. But that doesn't diminish the play, because we could, you could pick apart any play in history. You could pick apart any of the best moments in history in sports or whatever. You can do that. You can pick it apart. It doesn't diminish that moment. It was a hell of a pass. It was a hell of a catch. And yeah, the defender made a critical error, and he paid the price for it, and he'll never forget that. And you could see how devastated he was after the game, but that doesn't diminish that play at all. Don't have that take away anything from that play. That was a phenomenal catch, a phenomenal pass from Keenum, and a Cinderella-like moment. And that's the kind of moment that makes you believe in a team that they're a team of destiny. That's the kind of moment that can propel a team to a championship. So if you're the Eagles, you're an Eagles fan, you worry about that because, you know, you feel that makes the team believe that, you know, they're always going to win no matter what. Now that could be dangerous for that team though, because they might think, well, we can, you know, sometimes that makes you think, oh, we don't have to play well and we can still come out smelling like a rose. But on the other hand, for the other team that has to play them, it can be intimidating because you're like, you know what, boy, they got something going on here. I mean, we have to be careful because we give them a little bit too much. You know, I mean, it does play off your head a little bit. There's a little bit of a team of destiny kind of thing going with the Vikings. But that was a moment that will be in NFL history for a very, very long time for the Vikings, who have suffered so many heartbreaks, 1-point losses in the playoffs, and this is they were due, and they finally get a little bit of a break here. And for the Saints, it's devastating. It looks like Drew Brees is going to go back to New Orleans. A lot of people thought he was going to test the waters in free agency. Does not look like it's going to happen. But yeah, now you know. But the Vikings, huge, you know, and really it was a game that the Vikings dominated early. The Saints made a comeback late. Credit the Vikings for finding a way to get it done. And, you know, it's devastating for the Saints, but they'll be back. And, you know, the Vikings move on to play the Eagles, and we'll see how that goes. Now, before I go further, because I don't want them to think that I didn't see him down there. Mike, I know you're on. You're in the spotlight. I know.
No, that's okay. You keep talking about your football.
Well, I just
you're doing other things.
Well, that's okay. I'm just trying to get it done.
Let me know when you talk about a real sport, okay?
Okay. Good going, Mike. Good going. So that's what we're left with here as we go back here. You know, we got the Eagles, we got the Patriots, we got the Steelers, the Jaguars, and we got the Vikings. As far as our picks, I won out on the Eagles and the Falcons over the Falcons. Patriots over Titans, I won. So I went 2-0 on Saturday, and then I went 0-2 on Sunday as I had the Steelers over the Jags and the Saints over the Vikings. So all in all, I go 2-2, which is not too bad, especially since there's more upsets in the first 2 weekends anyway in the playoffs. So 2-2 I go here. And a lot of people asked me last week what I already addressed that. I did not mention what my pick was in the college football championship game. I said it was Alabama, and I was right. So I did mention that. I didn't think I did. I had something in my notes saying I needed to mention that, but guess not. All right. So that's what you had last weekend. A very, very, very good divisional playoff weekend. 3 out of the 4 games were entertaining. That's good. If you get more than half of them to be entertaining, that's great. So if all 4 are entertaining, God bless. But so now we shift the focus to conference championship weekend. 2 games on Sunday. And Patriots, Jaguars, and Eagles, and good Lord, Vikings. So 1 versus 2 on the NFC side and 1 versus 3 on the AFC side. Let's do the Patriots and the Jaguars first. This game, of course, being played in New England. 10-6 Jaguars versus the 13-3 Patriots. Look, to me, this game is a very simple call because New England's very hard to beat in their building in December and January. They close the deal. They're very hard to beat. Jacksonville runs the ball very effectively. We know they can play defense. The teams that usually beat Tom Brady are the teams that make him very uncomfortable in the pocket. Jacksonville can do that. We know they can sack the quarterback. We know they can get to the quarterback. A lot of people are making a big deal out of Tom Coughlin being with the Jaguars. We know what he's done with the Giants against the Patriots. Jacksonville has some ways to challenge the Patriots, okay? The question from the worry that I have is this. New England is also going to find ways to challenge Jacksonville. They're going to shut down the run. That's something that they can do. They're okay with shutting down the run. They're going to try to make Blake Bortles beat them. And are you convinced at this point that Blake Bortles can quarterback the Jacksonville Jaguars over the New England Patriots? Because that's really what's going to come down to. Do you think Blake can do enough against New England? Now, New England's defense and pass coverage is not great. They do give up plays, but Blake Bortles is not what you think of when you think of big plays. Okay, that's the thing. This is where, we talk about how in playoff games and championship games, the issues you have, the deficiencies that you have, what you lack, the things that you're not good at come back to haunt you. Here's where for Jackson, the one thing that they've not had all year, the one thing that's held them back from even having a better year is the fact they do not have a quarterback that can make big plays, that is reliable, that is a threat. You have a running game that's a threat. You have a defense that's a threat. You do not have a quarterback that's a threat. Now, he can run the ball, yes, but honestly, New England's going to make you pass the football. Last week, and that's something I'm concerned about too with him, is the fact that he had a good game last week against the Steelers. Problem with that is you worry about overconfidence, him thinking he can do more than he's actually capable of doing. You actually have to treat Blake Bortles like Alex Smith. You have to use him when you have to use him effectively, throw a lot of short routes, and try to find ways to just move the football with him in the passing game. You have to play it safe with him. That's really what you got to do. Well, can he do that? Can they do that? And will that be enough? That's the big thing, and that's what this game comes out. And when I make making a pick for this game, I just can't. The only thing holding me back from picking Jacksonville is Blake Bortles. And that's why I can't pick him, because Tom Brady is we know what he can do. We know what the offense can do. We know, even though the Patriots really have no business being in this kind of game, because they're not good. They're not the Patriots of old. They're not that good this year. They're not. But they find the ways to win. They have that poise. They have that confidence. They have enough playmakers. They have Brady at the quarterback position. They make adjustments at the halftime. They're always making adjustments. They're making you beat yourself. And that's really what it comes down to. And Jacksonville might be able to get them with the running game. Jacksonville might be able to get them with the defense. But I don't know if Jacksonville can get them with the quarterback play and the offense in the passing game. And that's where I think Jacksonville might lose the game. And that's why I'm picking the Patriots over the Jaguars. And what I think for the most part will be a close game throughout. I see the Patriots kind of putting it away late, but we'll see. But right now, again, Patriots over Jaguars meet in that first game. Second game, 13-3 Eagles versus is it 13-3 or 14-2? 13-3, I believe. Versus 12-4 Vikings, I believe, or is it 13? I'm looking at the wrong record. Sorry. Hang on. Let's see here. I'll get the wrong records. I just noticed I didn't post the social media links either. Thankfully, it looks like it doesn't make much difference, but I'll post them anyway. I got right into the football. Here we go. All right, here we go. All right, 13-3 Eagles versus 13-3 Vikings versus 13-3 Eagles. So this is a game that we all thought we were destined to see pretty much since late in the season when it became apparent the Eagles and the Vikings were among those teams to kind of watch as being head and shoulders above everybody in the NFC. So, it's a game that a lot of people, thought we were going to get. And obviously there's no Carson Wentz, so that changes things a little bit in regards to, how you look at the Eagles if you're a defense. Because, Foles, again, I mentioned earlier, he's very serviceable as a backup, but he makes a lot of mistakes. He takes a lot of unnecessary risks. He turns over the football. He is somebody that you got to be very careful. He can be a deep threat, yes. But you have got to be very careful with how you use him. The Eagles will try to get the job done with the running game. The Eagles will try to get the job done with their defense, just like they did last week, which is a very effective way of going about things. However, that's the same thing that the Vikings are going to do. The Vikings are going to try to get the job done with their defense and their running game. They don't put a lot of pressure on Case Keenum. They just do make. So, honestly, to me, this is an even matchup. If the Eagles had Wentz, it wouldn't be. I would give the edge to the Eagles because they have the better, more dynamic, explosive quarterback. But now that they don't, with Foles there, they're going to try to do the same thing that Vikings do with Case Keenum, which is we don't put the pressure on him because we don't, he can make mistakes and such. We use the running game, we use our defense, and we just look for him when we need to use him. So it's really the same boat. So, so to me, that's an even matchup. So the question becomes, which defense do you believe in more? Which running game do you believe in more? And ultimately, if it comes down to it, which quarterback late in the game do you have more faith in if it comes down to him to make a play when there's no other option? Unfortunately for the Eagles, I think it's the Vikings, especially after what happened last week, because I think they're going to have a lot of belief in themselves after last week. So when it comes down to it, I think I have to pick the Vikings, even though I've thought the Eagles were destined for the Super Bowl all year, and that really goes against my heart. But being fair here, I have to pick the Vikings. So I think Keenum has shown you enough to know that he's very poised. He is not going to be afraid of the moment. He has the ability to get it done, and he has the ability to go downfield and make a play. Does Foles? I think he does, but we haven't seen him demonstrate that really like Case Keenum does, especially last week. So I have to go with the Vikings here. I really do. I think it'll be a close game. I think it'll be a little bit more of a lower scoring game, much like it was last week with the Eagles and the Falcons. I like the Vikings here to advance and go to the Super Bowl. So I'm picking a Vikings-Patriots Super Bowl. Who would have thought? Patriots, obviously everybody would have thought. But Vikings, go show you what a crazy year it's been in the NFL. So I'm going with the Vikings over the Eagles in that second game. So Patriots over Jags, Vikings over Eagles. Those are my picks for conference championship weekend. Obviously, we'll talk about those games and look back at my picks next week. When we next have a sports show, we'll go over everything and all that good stuff. Now, I've gotten a lot of questions about the coaching carousel and some of the NFL coaching hires and my thoughts on those and what obviously nothing's official. It looks like Matt Patricia, the Patriots defensive coordinator, is going to go to the Lions. It looks like Josh McDaniels, the Patriots offensive coordinator, whose name has been bandied about for a couple years now for coaching jobs, is going to go to the Colts, which means that Vikings offensive line coach Shermer is probably going to go to the Giants aside of default because they've lost out on everybody else. Goes to show you how far the Giants have fallen. So it looks like that's the way it's going to shake out. I don't really have any opinion. Really, I can't really say too much. I mean, I like the McDaniels hire for the Colts because he's really good at quarterbacks. I think he'll be good at luck if they can get him healthy. I think he'll help there, depending on what kind of staff he has. I think that'll be fine. Patricia is known as a defensive mastermind. So, the Lions had issues with defense. Offense hasn't been a thing. So maybe that will help them, amp up the defense to go with the offense. Maybe that'll help them. So I don't seem like a bad pick. I'm not too sure about Shermer. Obviously, the Vikings have been, have had quite the turnaround. So, I mean, but I don't know enough about him. I know people like him. He's highly regarded. But, again, I don't know as much about him as I do about McDaniels and Patricia. So, so we have to see how those turn out. But I don't think any of them seem like bad hires. They all seem like good fits, really. Now, the Titans stuff, but malarkey, they lose to the Patriots. They get blown out. A lot of people made a big deal of their play calling, and McLarkey has said that a lot of things had changed because Mariota was hurt, whatever. look, there was some play calling issues there, but there's a play calling issue in a lot of the games. Even some of the teams that won had play calling issues, okay? I don't think there's anything really in that game that really struck me as obscene. But anyway, Mike Mularkey and the Tennessee Titans agreed to part ways yesterday. There had been talk. There had been talk of there being issues between the two parties, so it's not shocking. I mean, it's hard. It's always hard to imagine when a team, finally breaks the glass ceiling and breaks through like they did this year. I mean, and granted, we've thought for a few years now that they should have done this, that they should have made it, but they finally did. They got to the AFC Divisional round, and it's hard to imagine losing your head coach after that. But at the same time, if there's issues and nobody can get on the same page, which I think that seems like that was the case, then it's gonna be hard to go further, because you can't get on the same page. You can't get on the same page for certain things. Then it's going to be harder to further grow and advance. So, I mean, look, in all honesty, it's shocking in a way, again, how far they got based on what we all – I mean, just the one year that everybody kind of backed off and said, then we people picked in the last couple of years as a sweeper pick. Oh, they'll break through this year or whatever. They didn't do it. This year, people don't pick them, and they finally do it. So – but look, they get there. They get to the AFC Divisional round. They play the Patriots. You give them all the credit in the world. They had a breakthrough year. Ordinary. I mean, it's when you have that kind of year, it's just hard to imagine that the head coach is going to be gone. But again, if there's issues between them and him in the front office and ownership and that, and you're trying to continue to build on this, it does make it hard to do that if you don't get everybody on the same page. So I can understand why. If they felt like the differences were unworkable, then that's why they had to make the change now before they go further. So, we'll see what happens. That's a good job. And you wonder, this is something I was wondering about too. You wonder if they had any bearing on this coaching carousel here, because it seemed like McDaniels, Patricia, and Shermer were the three names being bandied about heavily. They all look like they're getting assigned to jobs, but will this Tennessee thing play any role in kind of flipping any of it? It's interesting. We'll see. I know there was some talk of McDaniels being, I think, tied into with the Tennessee job. So, that would change things for the Colts maybe if he gets sent there. So, again, I don't anticipate it. It looks like he's pretty much set on the Colts, but you don't know how that could change the game a little bit here as far as the coaching carousel goes. So something to follow as we go forward here. So I just wanted to briefly address that. So, all right, that's the football. So we did the coaching stuff. We looked back at last week and looked ahead here. So that's the football stuff. Really quickly, I want to do the baseball thing real quick, and this is gonna be quick. Because this is something I wasn't going to talk about. Again, this is one of the two things I didn't put in the show description that we're going to talk about. The Christian Yelich thing. Now, obviously, we talked about the Marlins. It's been a very slow baseball offseason after the winter meetings. Obviously, things have slowed to a crawl, really. There hasn't been a lot going on. Everybody's kind of waiting around, just trying to see what, feeling each other out. There's been a couple of deals this week with Andrew McCutchen going to the Giants. That's a pretty big deal. Obviously, that'll help them. It might have some issues. It might impact some things with the Yankees, and such, who are trying to deal with the Giants a little bit, but that was a big significant move there. But other than that, there hasn't been too much going on. But early in the offseason, you had the Marlins. They moved Giancarlo Stanton, they moved Marcell Ozuna, they moved D. Gordon, and it was said that they'd keep Christian Yelich, who was another of those breakthrough players that the Marlins had that was causing them to have like a ascension in the NL East. Well, there's been a lot of talk over the last couple of weeks about Yelich and how he feels about being with the Marlins when everybody else around him, as far as his friends and that core of top players, is gone. Well, today an article came out on ESPN that that mentioned how Christian Yelich's relationship with the Miami Marlins is irretrievably broken. Now, I'm going to quote some things from the article. I'm not going to read the whole article. But his agent even mentioned that he needs to get on with his career, and that's a quote. So this is from Jerry Krasnick at ESPN. You can find the article there. Christian Yelich's relationship with the Miami Marlins is irretrievably broken, and it would be in the best interest of both the outfield and the organization if the Marlins trade him before the start of spring training, his agent told ESPN on Tuesday. His agent, Joe Longo, went on to say, they have a plan. I respect that plan, but that plan shouldn't include Christian at this point in his career. He's in the middle of the best years of his career, and having him be part of a 100-loss season is not really where we want to see him going. The relationship between player and team is irretrievably broken. It's soured. He's part of the old ownership regime. The new ownership regime needs to get new parts in this plan and move forward, and he needs to get on with his career where he's got a chance to win. The big issue is him winning and winning now. He loves the city of Miami. He loves the fans. He's had nothing but a good experience in South Florida, and he feels sorry for where they ended up. But I think having him report to spring training and attempting to include him moving forward is going to be uncomfortable for both sides. I don't see how it's going to work. Yelich, catcher JT Realmuto, and infielder Starlin Castro, who the Yankees traded in the Stanton trade in December to the Marlins, all have expressed displeasure with the Marlins' recent roster tear and given either public or private indication that they'd like to be traded. GM Michael Hill said that the team would proceed with making moves based on the best interest of the franchise rather than accommodating players unhappy with the organizational direction. This is a quote from him. Should we feel like we need to make a trade involving any of our under contract controllable players, we'll be the ones to initiate that conversation. Always do what's best for the organization. So look, and Yelich is a good player. He's a Gold Glove and Silver Slug winner. He's 290 hitter last year. He's under control of 2021. He's a great guy to have. So the Marlins, who we've talked a lot about, like I said, this winter, have really, really botched a lot of things. We talked about how they botched the Giancarlo Stanton situation. We talked about how they're really just from Jeter to everybody's really just messing up this organization. The way that they've handled the fans, the way that they've handled Giancarlo Stanton, the way they're handling this. Look, we talked about how they should have handled Stanton. I'll talk about how they should handle this. If you're going to trade all of everybody around, if you're going to trade the majority of your core and only with one player, then that's ridiculous. Okay, if you're having a fire sale, you're having a fire sale. If you're trading as many guys as they are from their core, you're having a fire sale. You get rid of everybody. You strip it down, you tear it down, and you start fresh. You don't leave a guy there and expect him to be all hunky-dory okay with this. Because when he's been playing over the last couple years, you've been playing to win. You've been playing to get to the playoffs and win. That's what you've been playing for. And now you're expecting this guy who's played 4.5 years for you. He's an all-star. He was surrounded by all this talent. You're expecting him to all of a sudden be like all hunky-dory with nobody being around him and having a 100-loss season? You're expecting any of these guys to be? This is where you clean it out. This is why these teams do that. You get rid of everybody because of the fact that you do not want to have bad feelings. You do not want to have a negative locker room or clubhouse. You get rid of everybody that's part of that old core, and you start building a new one. Every position is essentially an audition. Every position is essentially a tryout. And you move on the experienced players. You move them out, get what you can get for them, and start fresh so that you don't have any bad feelings around. That's what you do. If you're going to just if you keep what's left here, if you leave some of these players here, it's going to slow down your rebuild, and it's going to cause problems. And it's going to impact some of the other young players in the way that they view things. So it's in the Marlins' best interest to start moving not only Yelich, but some of these other players, including Castro, who they got in the deal with the Yankees. They should have spun them off already. They really should have. They're handling this all wrong. They're alienating players, and really what they're doing too is they're preventing it so that no player is ever going to want to go to them. Not that they really want to begin with, but they're making it hard for any player to want to say, I want to go play for the Miami Marlins. They're treating their players like crap. They're handling this the complete wrong way from start to finish. And I know Jeter, and obviously he probably has no idea what he's doing. He's never been in this situation before. But he has people around him that, this is common sense. And as a player, as a former player, he should know that this is not the way to handle it. He should know that. They made one mistake after the other. This organization is just in a bad place right now. It's going to take a long time to not only build it from the standpoint of putting a winning product on the field, but it's going to be a long time before they can build up a trust with players and with the media and with the fan base. It's going to be a long time if they ever are able to make up for what they've done. They've just bungled this from day one. It's embarrassing how badly they've done that. So we'll see what happens. I imagine they're going to have to move him because you can't have at least Christian Yelich. Some of the other names mentioned they got to move too. But they got to at least move Yelich. And they can get a lot back for him. Because you can't have this kind of stuff going into spring training. You just can't have it. So we'll see what they choose to do. But they're in their situations. This is not fun. Not in the least. Okay, so that's the baseball story I want to talk about. A quick NBA story. And this is, again, another thing that I didn't put in the show description. And I decided to add because I thought it was worth talking about because it was a big source of discussion today. And I know it's early. It's still relatively early in the NBA season. A lot of people don't like to pay attention to All-Star Weekend next month. And then that's kind of when people check and go, all right, where are we at? Oh, all right, we got a couple months left. Here come the playoffs and, whatever, especially in recent years with the Warriors and the Cavs dominating the proceedings. But I think this is worth talking about because in light of what happened last night and that being the second Warriors-Cavs game, and in light of where the Cavs are and how things are different now with Kyrie Irving being in Boston, Isaiah Thomas being with the Cavaliers now, and the Cavaliers, for many people, not being the same team, and Golden State being, showing that they're just as dominant as they were in those finals last year. A lot of people are wondering, it's been a very big source of discussion today, and I thought it was worth talking about, if the Warriors-Cavs rivalry is dying, if this is over with. Because the rivalry is that it's a back and forth. Now, over the years, you've seen some rivalries go through a period where one team might dominate and be the one that wins all the championships and that kind of thing. But this rivalry has been one of those rare ones where, you see a lot of back and forth. The Cavs win, then the Warriors win. You see that back and forth. That's where they've kind of spoiled you. So that has people, the way that the Cavs have been playing, the way that they played in both games against the Warriors, the way they played last year in the finals against the Warriors when they had Kyrie Irving, and now they don't. That has people wondering if this rivalry is dead and if the Cavs can even make the finals this year. So, Mike, your thoughts. Do you think the rivalry is dead, and do you think that the Cavs have enough here to get there and even beat them in the finals?
Man, I do think Tom Brady is going to win the Super Bowl again. Likely, but why are you laughing?
I don't know. I'm just laughing.
Think about NFL still?
No, I moved on. Well, I did you even hear what I asked you?
How long ago did you move on?
About 15 minutes ago. I even did a baseball story.
You did a baseball story? What could there possibly be to report on in baseball?
I talked about the Christian Yelich Marlins story where he wants to be traded, and so some of the other players because they hate the way that's been torn down. And
okay, question 3: who the hell is Christian Yelich?
He's an all-star outfielder. He's young. He's been there for 4.5 years, and he was part of that core with Giancarlo Stanton and Ozuna and the kind of core that was getting Miami towards winning the NL East last year before they fell off late in the season, that kind of thing.
Brian. The only player people even give a remotely shit about from whatever team you were talking about, I'm assuming it's the Marlins, was Giancarlo Stanton. Anybody outside of Marlins fans and nerds like you even learned that guy's name?
Okay, Mike, what's your point?
I don't know what are we doing?
Okay.
Basketball?
We had moved on from the MLB. I was asking
Are we talking about the NBA thing?
Yeah, we're talking about the Cavs and the Warriors. Now people think the rivalry is dying and that the Cavs don't even some people think the Cavs won't even make the finals. The way that they're playing
the NBA story we're talking about.
That's the NBA story. Well, that was discussed all day today. People have been asking.
That wasn't what was discussed today. What people are talking about is how the Clippers players almost avoided an ass beating on behalf of the Houston Rockets.
That's true too. That is true.
Austin Rivers needs to not run his mouth. When you are a superstar, was like Larry Bird was, like Magic Johnson was, like Clyde Drexler and Scottie Pippen. Your mouth to the other team, Garnett is, and Paul Pierce, and LeBron James. When you're on that level, your fucking mouth. When you're Austin Rivers, nothing on the NBA, in the NBA really, shut your fucking trap, dude. Man, Trevor Ariza was gonna beat the shit out of that guy. Apparently, Chris Paul had to vacate the premises. He didn't want to get in between, but he did not want anything because look, between his team and his old team, because apparently Blake Griffin was ready to beat the shit out of somebody. They were using secret tunnels.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's the story in the NBA people were talking about. The Cavaliers. You and I talked about this last night. Yes, I imagine there was some discussion because the fact is, got Kevin Durant, and they didn't need to do anything else to get better. They still have deficiencies. Yes, struggle sometimes against good rebounding teams. An offensive team, but Golden State has improved defensively somehow. Somebody has taught that team to play a modicum of defense. It means an awful lot. And Golden State's already only lost 9 games this year, so there's that. However, championship in the last year they pretty much got run out of the series. And then Kyrie Irving ran himself, out of Cleveland. He wanted to go to Boston. That's great. Isaiah Thomas. People are saying Cleveland is not even the favorite to win. Okay, let here. Is Cleveland in a rough spot right now? Yes. However, just literally came back from injury. Thomas literally just came back from injury. You're going to have to give him get his sea legs back, so to speak. You're going to need to give him a second to get acclimated and ready to play at a high level again. Thomas. This is the key to Cleveland's future. If he can kind of develop into the player he was developing to be in Boston, then Kyrie who? Isaiah Thomas's ceiling, I feel, is better than Kyrie Irving's, and that's not just because I'm put off by Kyrie's attitude. No. Because this is my opinion, and you're welcome to question it. I think Kyrie Irving Not Kyrie. I think Isaiah Thomas has a higher ceiling, higher talent ceiling. Kyrie Irving does. Thomas is a true point guard, but much like Kyrie Irving is to an extent. But Kyrie Irving is more dynamic off the ball, but Kyrie Irving has also had more time in the NBA. No, they've had equal times in the NBA. Excuse me. They were in the same draft because it was like 1 and 6, and it was like an equal trade. They've had the same time. However, Kyrie Irving was way quicker than Isaiah Thomas was. Isaiah Thomas just recently developed into a star, I should have said.
Mm-hmm.
So that being said, I think Isaiah Thomas's ceiling is a little bit higher than Kyrie's. Isaiah Thomas is going to be under the learning tree for a little bit. And LeBron James has, and I will give LeBron all of the credit in the world, he's turned into a fairly unselfish player. Westbrook stats like, Russ Westbrook is 35 points and those 10 assists were basically own team had to force him to make, or his old team had to steal the ball off of him so they can maybe get some points too. That's what I mean to say. I just got a story about a new California, which is all right. I'll get a look at that in a minute. But that being said, let Isaiah Thomas heal. There's a reason why when Kyrie was traded pretty much for Isaiah Thomas, almost straight up, they had Jay Crowder too. Equal trade.
Right.
Equal trade. So let that happen.
Right.
Now, with Cleveland, they need a rebounder. They need a defender, and they need a rebounder. I thought they would have had that with Jay Crowder when he was into the Celtics. The problem with Jay Crowder, and we like Jay Crowder. Dude was a Marquette, Golden Eagle. Dude was tough. Is not having a good season.
Right.
Jay Crowder's just not having a good season. Tristan Thompson years were having their glory years when LeBron came back and they were really becoming a contender again. Tristan Thompson was thought of as the X factor. When that guy plays, when that guy plays, everything in Cleveland makes sense. The problem with Tristan Thompson is he has been, I don't know where he's been. He has been nowhere in the NBA in the last 2 years. Tristan Thompson is a specter. He's a ghost of his former self. Tristan Thompson doesn't exist anymore. This season, the guy they were counting on to be the X factors. He's averaging 5 points a game and 5 rebounds a game. For a power forward, those are pathetic numbers, especially for a guy who's either a starter or one of the first guys off the bench. Tristan Thompson is giving you no production. Jay Crowder is not giving you a lot of production. What's his face? Of Kevin Love. I'm sorry. I blanked on Kevin Love's name. Kevin Love is having a, but we've come to expect that out of Kevin Love lately. We've come to expect this out of Kevin Love. the roster. And the problem is Kevin Love. Yes, he's a forward center. Blah 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 blah
Right.
blah. Kevin Love's a forward. Let's just. He's a forward. He's averaging 20 points a game. Cleveland needs a true center. Supposed to be Tristan Thompson. That was supposed to be Tristan Thompson. And Tristan Thompson shat the bed. So now Tristan Thompson shits the bed. So our best options are Kevin Love and Channing Frye. Issue with Cleveland. They're getting old. They're getting older. Wade. What are they going to be? Derrick Rose. Iman can't do anything about that. It's been in the NBA a million years. Jeff Green in the NBA a long time. I mean, he's only 31, and he's almost hit his 10-year anniversary. In fact, he did hit his 10-year anniversary. And that's kind of a long time. It's not as long as LeBron's been in the league, but LeBron James his ceiling is, and my hand's above my head, and Jeff Green's wasn't. Cavaliers are getting older. It's hurting them a little bit. So and look, right at this point in time it's impossible. You got to wait for the draft. And my season's not over yet. All right, so we've lost our last 4. We're 2-8 in our last 10. We're 3rd in the Eastern Conference. Well, we're still in it. Cleveland is they need defense and they need a true center, and that's something they need to work on before the trade deadline hits. They need to start putting feelers out for an actual fucking center. Looking at the draft, they need to scrap this year and say, all right, we're probably not going to be winning the title this year. Let's look in the draft for a center we can get who's kind of ready-made for the NBA. Because let's fucking face it, Tristan Thompson shits the bed every night.
Yeah.
He's only played in 23 games this year. That's a fucking fall from grace from that guy. Center. We need a rebounder. We need a true center. Any of these things. And look, if Jay Crowder wakes up tomorrow and his game suddenly restored to what it was, then Cleveland's in a much better spot. That's just the long and the short. Is Cleveland out of it? No. I still think in the end, it's going to come down to either Cleveland or Boston.
Right. Yeah.
Rivalry dead? No. But is it losing steam? Yes. It's going to cool down until Cleveland can kind of get 1 or 2 players to really bring them back up to prominence.
Yeah.
Not only that, once Isaiah Thomas develops and they've got LeBron James coming, LeBron James keep playing at a high level.
Right.
Really develops that star that he is. Love continues to exist. let's just say if he exists.
Yeah. Well, you get production out of him, so.
I mean, you can complain because you're paying him like all-star money, and he's 20-point guy.
Right.
Then you get a big rebounder, you get a big defender, or let's say Jay Crowder decides to suddenly start off. Then Cleveland's ready for a rebound. So the rivalry will probably cool down. But it's not out. Don't assume that this rivalry is for the count, because it's not.
Oh no, it's not.
So there.
It's not done.
And it is certainly not done. By a long shot.
What were you going to, by the way? What are you going to say?
By the way, Austin Rivers almost got his ass whooped.
Yeah. This
by half of the Rockets bench.
Just going back to the point, though. Well, he did. You're right. Just going back to your point, though. They do need a center. They don't even need it to be a dominant center. It could be just a role-playing center. They don't need it to. They don't need any. They just need production. Tristan Thompson was there. You got away with the lack of production because he was such a dominant defender and such a good rebounder. He could still service that need, but the one thing you got to deal with here, okay? What you lost for Kyrie Irving, and what you get with Isaiah Thomas. Isaiah can get to the basket too. I'm not saying he can't, but Isaiah is better than Kyrie as far as shooting goes. He's a better shooter. Okay? He's going to look for shots more. He's not a slasher like Kyrie Irving is. Okay? He can still make. He can still make guys around him better. I'm not disputing that. But he's not a slasher like Kyrie Irving is. He will stop and put floaters in. He'll look for a jump shot. He's more of a pure scorer than Kyrie Irving is. Kyrie Irving can score, we know that. And I do agree with you. I think his ceiling is more because I think he's got more dimensions than Kyrie does. Kyrie is just like, I'm going to go to the basket or I'm going to dish it. That's what I'm going to do. He doesn't really look for shots as much as Isaiah does. Isaiah has more of a game because he can open up things inside because he takes more jump shots. That's what Isaiah Thomas does. So I think the problem for Cleveland right now is you don't have a healthy Isaiah Thomas. Okay? He's not there yet. But even if he is there, here's the thing. Right now, they just got him back. So it's almost like Cleveland has to go through the beginning of the season all over again. They just learned how to play without him. And they were starting to run off a winning streak. Now they have to learn to play again with him. So you have to give him a couple weeks. We've seen this time and time again with Cleveland, how they have to gel together. In Cleveland, how many times has Cleveland gone through a bad stretch over the last couple of seasons? Usually happens twice a season. It's like the first time this has happened. Every year I was like, I don't know if they're going to make it. Well, they'll make it to at least the Eastern Conference Finals. That's where they're going to go. They'll at least make it that far. Whether Boston beats them or not, we'll see. Because Boston's playing good basketball. They've been playing good basketball all season. But I think what Cleveland is missing is a healthy Isaiah Thomas, the ability to have everybody on the same page because they haven't played enough together yet. But I also think Mike mentioned it. They're lacking on defense, and some of it is in the paint, in the post, yes, because Tristan Thompson, yes, that is a thing. But they don't have, other than LeBron James, they don't have a good on the ball defender up at the top of the key. They can't shut down. This is something they've had a problem with for the last couple of years. They've yet to address it. They do not have enough good top of the key defenders. They give up a lot of three-point shots because they do not defend the wings well or the top of the key well. LeBron's the only one that does it. That's a problem. That's something they have yet to address. They need to get some wing defenders that can defend the three and a healthy Isaiah Thomas and a better post player than what you got. Again, it doesn't have to be a 20-point-a-game scorer. It could be somebody that just gives you about 10, 11 points a game, can rebound the ball well, and can play good defense. A role-playing center or power forward would do wonders for Cleveland. Because Kevin Love is not that. He hasn't been that for a while. He's more of a stretch four kind of guy. That's what he is. If they get those things, I think they'll be okay shape. I'm not worried about Cleveland. I think Cleveland's going to at least get to the Eastern Conference. Who else is going to beat them but Boston? Even Boston's no guarantee. Do I think they can beat the Warriors in their current state? No, they can't. Do I think even if a healthy Isaiah Thomas, they can beat the Warriors? It's still iffy. But if they make a couple improvements, a couple of the tweaks that we both mentioned, yeah, they can beat the Warriors. But they have to make those improvements because the status quo isn't good enough. The rivalry's not dead. Just like the Duke-Carolina rivalry didn't go away when North Carolina stunk it up for 8 to 10 years. Okay, the rivalries don't die. They're still there. They might not be as intense, but they're still there. They can get reignited again the minute the other team gets good. It becomes more of a balancing act. We'll see. It's a worthy point of discussion, but you can't write anybody off yet, and you don't know where you're going to end up. You got the trade deadline. You don't know what's going to happen yet. And let's see what happens when Isaiah's at full strength and everybody's on the same page with the Cavaliers with him playing. Let's see what happens when that happens. That'll give us a good indication of how far Cleveland can go. So I thought that was worth. I mean, a lot of people have been asking about it. It was a big discussion point today. I thought it was worth bringing up. Obviously, Golden State has beat them pretty good both times they played them this year, and obviously we know what happened in the finals last year. But that doesn't mean anything if they both get to the finals. So clean slate, you don't know, and you don't know what kind of state Cleveland will be in by then. So we'll see. All right, so that's the only NBA story I wanted to talk about. So we did NBA, we did a little MLB as well, we did NFL. Now let's talk about college basketball. And as conference play continues to heat up, we continue to see a pretty topsy-turvy kind of year here. And you know, we've had these kind of years in the last couple of years. We've had these years in the last couple of years, but you know, usually people are like, oh, it's mediocrity. Oh, it's the quality of play is not so good, and all that's not the case this year. The quality of play, for the most part, unless you're watching some Big Ten games, is not bad. I think I said this last week. I just think there's a lot of good teams. There's only a few great teams, but there's a lot of good teams, and I think you're seeing that. And some of these comps, like the Big 12 and the SEC, are so much better that you know they're making ways, and they're making their conferences better and giving their conferences some really good pop. And you know, some conferences are taking a step back, like the Big 10 the last couple of years, the Pac-12. But the Big 12 and the SEC have really stepped forward this year. Really stepped forward. And are right up there with the ACC and the Big East as far as depth and as far as amount of teams that can make the NCAA tournament. So it's been an interesting week. There's been some stuff off the court, like Notre Dame lost another big player. He's got Harvey. He's got MRI, so they continue to get banged up. I don't know if you saw Marvin Bagley, but popped his shoulder back in last night and finished the game. Duke win there. That was pretty interesting. You know, some more moves in the top 25 after this week. Obviously, again, a kind of a topsy-turvy week as teams, you know, not only did continue the theme of teams not being able to win on the road, but again, just a lot of depth in some of these conferences we've seen. Tonight, we have a few more upsets on the board. Right now, with 40 seconds left on ESPN, South Carolina leads Kentucky at home 73-68. Kentucky continues to mystify. And again, another team that can't win on the road. North Carolina beat Clemson at home 87-79 earlier tonight. Purdue beat Wisconsin 78-50. And again, good teams not being able to win on the road. Oklahoma lost to Kansas State 87-69. A bad performance by them. So again, ranked teams, good teams not being able to win on the road. It's kind of a thing. We've said it. And some more big shakeups here tonight as far as some upsets go and such. And that was just tonight. As we look back at the week that was here, going back to a week ago, again, with so much depth in some of these conferences, I feel like you have an upset every night. But theoretically, they're only upsets maybe in numbers only. If you look at some of these teams, there's not much distance. You know, Michigan has kind of come on strong, but you've had these great matches between Oklahoma and Texas Tech, which Oklahoma beat Texas Tech last week as well. Marquette beat Seton Hall last week. Kentucky beat an A&M team that just can't seem to get out of their own way. Creighton beat Butler, who has been really, really surprising as far as what they've been able to do against some good teams at home. Villanova beat a very good Xavier team last week, which Villanova right now is far and away the best team in the country. I think we can safely say that at this point. Texas beat a TCU team in double overtime, 99-98. One of the better games of the season in my mind, who surprised some people. Louisville beat Florida State, which they desperately needed because, Louisville's been desperately seeking a signature win. There's their signature win right there. In a kind of like a down year for them. Oregon being an Arizona State team that's starting to and again, even though I still think they're good, and I said it when they got ranked, what was it, 4th in the country? I thought they were good. You gotta be careful. We said it with Texas A&M as well. People got crazy about A&M and Arizona State early, and look how they're falling off. Arizona State's 1-3 in the Pac-12. They're down to 13-3 now. We talked about A&M. They're falling completely off. NC State got a big win over Clemson last week as well, so NC State got a signature win that they have been needing. Let's see what else. Butler beat Marquette. That's not that big of a win, though. Let's see what's on Saturday. I'm trying to look back at my scores here. Texas Tech beat West Virginia, which is huge for them after the loss that earlier in the week. Michigan beat Michigan State. Michigan State proven to everybody that not only are they having trouble on the road, but they're having trouble at home. Purdue beat a reeling Minnesota team where everybody was high on. They've fallen completely off. Oklahoma beat TCU. TCU didn't have the best week. Well, yeah, they okay. Xavier beat Creighton. Arizona over Oregon. Clemson beat Miami, and really what was a better game than it looked. Because I watched that game. It was a better game than it looked like. North Carolina beat a reeling Notre Dame team by 1 point. You got to give Notre Dame credit. They've had so many injuries, and they're still hanging tough in these games. Auburn continued to surge to a big win over Mississippi State. Florida State beat Syracuse in double overtime, which was a very good game. Tennessee beats A&M, who's now 0-5 in the SEC. At what point do we get off the A&M bandwagon, I guess? Because that 0-5, you're in a big hole. That's not going to get you into the tournament. You go from being a team that people thought might be a 2 or 3 seed in the tournament to not even being in the tournament. Virginia beat NC State on Sunday. I talked about what happened tonight. What happened yesterday? Duke beat Miami, and that's the game I told you about with Marvin Bagley. Kansas beat West Virginia on the road. So a lone exception to the good team losing on the road rule. And Maryland lost to Michigan on the road, 68-67 at what was good. So some pretty big shakeups. A lot of Big 12 action. A lot of these top tier teams, a lot of Big 12 teams in the top 15 playing each other. Some big shakeups there. Arizona State and A&M and Notre Dame are reeling. Virginia continues to ascend. Villanova continues to dominate. So you look across the college landscape here. We talked about ability to win on the road being an issue for a lot of teams. We talked about just being a lot of good teams, a few great teams, but a lot of good teams, which is why you have so much depth in some of these conferences. The Big 12 and the SEC being so much better, right up there with the Big East and the ACC. The Pac-12 and the Big 10 taking huge steps back. But significant injuries. And really some really good games. It's been the storylines here so far here as we here in mid-January, early on in conference play. Over the next week, a couple games to look for before I throw the mic. SMU, Wichita State tomorrow. Villanova, Georgetown, old school feel there. Auburn, Alabama. Texas Tech, Texas. Seton Hall, Creighton go again. Couple good games tomorrow. To keep an eye out for. Gonzaga, St. Mary's will play their traditional game on Thursday night, so keep an eye on that one, even though I don't buy St. Mary's or Gonzaga at all, but it's always a classic matchup, so you got that game on Thursday night there on ESPN. Saturday, always a big day of games. Villanova, Connecticut, which it's an old favorite of Mike's. That game in Connecticut, so that'll be fun. A team that's flown out under the radar all year, Houston. They're 14-3. They get Wichita State on Saturday. Ohio State, who's now ranked, versus Minnesota. Ohio State's kind of surprised some people. Oklahoma State. That's a classic rivalry. Texas, West Virginia. Xavier, Seton Hall. Notre Dame, Clemson might be interesting. TCU, Kansas State might be interesting. Baylor, Kansas has some good feel to it. Let's see what else. Tennessee, South Carolina, Georgia, Auburn. Not bad games. Florida, Kentucky is the primetime game on Saturday. That's obviously big. We talked very highly of Florida early, but they've fallen off. Kentucky will go in with a loss after tonight, probably. I think it's already done. I think they will go in for a loss, so that game will carry some significance here. As Kentucky will be in I know 4-3 in the SEC, while Florida is 4-1, so that's interesting. So that game has some importance for Kentucky. It's a game they probably need to get at home. Sunday, Miami, NC State. It's probably the only game worth checking out. Monday, North Carolina, Virginia Tech. West Virginia, TCU. Aren't bad games there. And then next week, next Tuesday, Providence, who's beaten a lot of good teams despite their record, against Villanova. Clemson against Virginia. Kansas, Oklahoma State, Texas Tech. So some good games next Tuesday here opposite us to check out. So some of the games that I would recommend and think are of high magnitude here, I would check out over the next week if you're interested. So check your local listings and check them out if you're interested in those. Mike, your thoughts on college basketball and what's gone on over the last week?
It's been a mess there, Brian. It's been a mess. Even tonight, South Carolina gets a quality win. That's okay. You blow your nose. You blow your nose, champ. Nose champ like you're a cock. A game cock. Because South Carolina tonight, 76-68. It's pretty big news. Kentucky lost again.
Yep.
Surprise, surprise, you know. Syracuse won a game, finally.
They couldn't lose that one.
They tried.
They did.
They tried.
They did. I watched enough to know. I haven't watched the second half yet, but I saw the first. They tried.
Cincinnati played one of the worst games of basketball today.
Oh Jesus. I know. Yeah.
They played UCF.
Yep.
9-38. It's a barn burner right there.
Mm.
Surprisingly is competing. We thought Louisville wouldn't be anything this year, but they're competing, and that's what matters, I suppose. Oklahoma fell off.
A little bit, yeah.
Oklahoma fell off. They got their asses whooped tonight. But again, it just follows a trend in college basketball this year that it's hard to get these big wins on the road. It's very hard. Duke and Kansas, two teams we didn't think were going to get big wins on the road, actually did. Duke got lucky at Miami, but then again, 8-on-5, hard for the Hurricanes to kind of beat that one. Kansas kind of surviving West Virginia. That's the best way, because I think we saw some of that game.
Yep.
And the best way of suggesting it was surviving. Since, I didn't think they'd score. And twice we checked, and twice they didn't. So, it surpassed some expectations, but those expectations were exceedingly low. Excuse me. It's been pretty crazy. This season has been pretty topsy-turvy so far. There has been lots of upsets, even more than you typically think. Talk forever, but It's been a crazy, crazy season so far, and we're just getting into conference play, and teams that have no business winning games are knocking off some of the best teams in the country. And then teams that you'd expect to be dominant are struggling. We expected to have a better season than this year, and this is the second week in a row they've had a big loss to an unranked team. North Carolina's credit, it's a good win. Right. They can keep the momentum going by playing Tennessee and winning. They're building. But it just kind of speaks to some of the themes this year. It's like there's a lot of parity in college basketball. A lot of these teams, there's no upper echelon of teams this year. There's no upper echelon.
So
it's even more difficult than in previous years. It's hard to win on the road. Hard to win on the road this year. So we've got these two trends, and obviously this week it continues. Kentucky is struggling to win on the road. They drop another game to South Carolina. Oklahoma goes on the road to Kansas State and gets fucking run out of the building. Excuse my French. And Connecticut, who's looking to compete in the AAC, the American, they get destroyed by Memphis. So, road wins, as we've discussed, are going to be at a premium this year, and they're going to be seen as a premium. And they're going to be, I feel like those things are going to be weighed more heavily this year. Road and neutral court wins are going to be things that are going to decide a lot of these teams' fates. So a lot of these teams need to get some road wins on their conference, or they need to do some damage in their conference tournament. The outside looking in, and Brian mentioned this already, Villanova goes to Georgetown tomorrow. It's an old school Big East kind of game. Georgetown might have one of the worst strength of schedules in the country this year, but they're still 12-5, and they're still looking to compete in the Big East. Yes, they lost at Seton Hall, but Georgetown is better in their building. They're better in their building. They compete stronger in their building. They only lost to Butler by 2 in their building. They lost to Creighton by a lot in their building. So, I mean, it's hard to say. But Villanova is going to be the biggest test for this Georgetown team. Because Villanova is, and look, I am a fan of the Villanova Wildcats. But I feel like they're indisputably the best team in the NCAA this year. Indisputably the best. And it's hard to kind of argue that. They've dropped one game. It was at Butler. Butler's been kind of up and down this year. Villanova's went out. They've played people. Tennessee's ranked now. Villanova beat them by 9. Gonzaga, for some reason, they're ranked. Villanova beat them by more than 9. I'm not doing that math right now. Sorry, guys. They won the Big 5 again, or whatever. They won. I think it's the Big 5 in Philly. Beat Xavier. Xavier's top 10 team all year. Kind of whooped Xavier's ass, actually. Whooped Xavier's ass by a lot. But again, that game was at Villanova. It's at Villanova. The Wells Fargo Center. So that's where we are. But I don't need to make a case for Villanova.
Nobody does.
The best team in the country this year.
Just to wrap this
Mike,
up.
what about Duke? Duke has the advantage because they've got extra players. And you're right. They do.
They do.
But Mike, Michigan State's going to be super good this year. I'm like, you're right. Regular season, of course Michigan State's good. Wait till a tournament setting happens, and then Michigan State will reveal themselves. It's like when you paint with invisible ink. Your secret message, you're writing your secret message, and then when you look under the black light or whatever, you're going to reveal that secret message, and that secret message is Michigan State sucks in tournaments.
Are you done? Are you done?
Before you left, so I had to string this along.
Sorry, I had something that came up, emergency, but pregnant wife's upstairs. That's all I'm going to say.
The top every season. Friends are a premium, and Villanova's super good.
Let's just be fair here. There's only two teams that have been able to kind of survive a lot of this, and that's Virginia and that's Villanova. You know, that's why they're the top two teams. Now, is Virginia the number 2 team in the country? I don't know.
Well, let's preface it. Let's preface this real quick. Is Virginia second best team in the country by rank? Yes. In actuality, are they the second best team in the country? They're not even the second best team.
Right. No. Well, that was going to be my point, was that they've been able to do what a lot of other teams – see, I think what we've seen this year is that this is not a knock. Sometimes it can be seen – sometimes it can be a knock in some ways, because when you think of a streaky team, it means they're inconsistent. There's been a lot of streaking, but there's been a lot of streakiness because it depends on what your schedule is. You know, if you play more home games, you might win more. Like, you might see – like, let's say a team plays three out of 5 games at home. Well, chances are they're going to win those 3 games. All of a sudden, they're going to have a better record because they had home games. Or they maybe played a lull in the schedule where they played some bad teams, and then they got back into the meat of their conference and started playing some good teams, right? So, you know, it really just depends this year on where you're at in your schedule as far as what you do. So, I mean, you've seen a lot of that, and for Virginia so far and for Villanova, it hasn't mattered. But Villanova...
Let's look at Virginia real quick. Well, finish your thought, and then we'll look at Virginia real quick. But Villanova,
I think, is the one team that this year, okay, they got the one loss, and that was they got this wrecked at Butler. Okay, that was a bad game. They had a bad game. Butler played well. Tough place to play. You let that one go. But since then, they haven't had a blimp. They haven't had a close call. They pretty much done their thing. And they played some good teams. They beat Xavier last week. You know what I mean? They played some good teams. So Villanova, unlike Virginia, has played strong opponents. Now, Virginia has played a couple. Villanova's played more. And Villanova has won games in dominant fashion. They're a multi-layered team. They got defense, offense, guard play, post play. They have it all. We talked about it. Virginia is defense, you know, possession basketball, 3-point shot. They've beaten a lot of teams by the skin of their teeth, which has been their mantra for the last 3 or 4 years. So they don't have as many of the quality players that they've had. Like Malcolm Brogdon's not there anymore, so they don't have him. But Virginia is what they've been the last couple of years. And that's something that you and me have knocked, is that this is the kind of play that doesn't work well in the NCAA tournament. It can get you a lot of good. It can give you a lot of good regular seasons. You're going to look up. They might, you know, end of the regular season, you're going to look up and they might only have like 3 losses or something. And you're like, wow, Virginia had a good year. And then they go in the ACC tournament. They might even win the ACC tournament with that kind of style.
Let's not go that far.
Well, they might, depending on what happens. They might. But then you get them into the NCAA tournament, and depending on where they go, who they play, it's going to depend on how far they go. And we've seen time and time again, they end up close to ever came to a Final Four the year that Syracuse beat them. And how did Syracuse beat them? They sped them up. If you run into a team that can speed them up and consistently draw turnovers off them, they're done. They're done. Because that works against everything that they're designed to be. So you can do that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
that's not Villanova.
Quick. Not Villanova, but real quick, let's do that quick deep dive into Virginia. Because they're the thing. They're the focal story of the season. They are. This is the microcosm of the season because Virginia. They did the best team they played non-conference. The best team they played non-conference was West Virginia. West Virginia at West Virginia, and they shit the bed. Virginia is 16-1. Only quality team I feel like they played out of conference was West Virginia.
Yeah.
The only quality game they had on the road. Now, West Virginia,
Right.
Virginia's got an interesting little group of schedule coming up. Virginia beat teams that could win their conference, who down the road could be helpful, but they got a lot of those games. They got a lot of these games at Virginia. They got Monmouth at Virginia. They got Lehigh at Virginia. They got Davison at Virginia. They got Hampton at Virginia College, which they almost lost. Game at Virginia. Syracuse almost beats Virginia at Virginia, but Virginia wins. Carolina shat a turd out at Virginia. All of Virginia's biggest wins came in their building. Virginia hasn't even had the hardest part of their schedule yet. Because here, this is at Georgia Tech. Excuse me, they get Clemson at home, so that might be a win for Virginia. Then they go to Duke, and let's be clear here. Virginia, for all their slowness and their three-point shooting and their possession basketball, it's hard to beat 8-on-5 now. Then they go to Syracuse, Florida State. They go to Miami, Louisville. All of these places are incredibly difficult places to play. All of these places. They're lucky they only played Carolina once, and it was at Virginia. Virginia's rough part of the schedule happens. But January 27th, that's the game you want. If you want to see what Virginia is really like, watch when they have to go to Duke. And shit is I give Duke. And I give Duke a lot of shit. And all of it, I feel, is well-earned. Right or wrong, I feel it's all well-earned. Probably the second best team in the country. By far and away, Duke, and you can agree with me, Brian, or you can disagree with me. I don't care. But Duke is probably the second best team in the country. Be the big test of Virginia. So it's hard to say what you're going to get, but Virginia, all of Virginia's biggest wins came at home, and the one time they were tested on the road, they lost.
Right.
They lost. Villanova, and I already went over Villanova, so I don't know why I'm saying, meanwhile, let's look at Villanova.
No.
That's my impression of me. They beat Xavier, etc., etc. So go. Before I start talking about my team,
I will say is this. I think. I mean, you and me have said this before too. You can. There's always two lists. There's the best team, and then there's the most talented team. And sometimes the most talented team wins, and then sometimes it's the best team that wins. Sometimes it's the best team is the most talented team. It depends on how it all plays out in the tournament and all that stuff. I think the best team is Villanova. I think the most talented team is Duke. But I think the best team is Villanova. So, and it's Duke's only the best is only more talented because they have more upside NBA type players right now. Villanova might very well have more good players in general, but are they high end NBA prospects? No. So Villanova is the number one team far and away. And again, we talked about Virginia. They're going to be at the top for the rest of the top 25 for the rest of the regular season because they're going to always avoid the bad losses because they're going to wreak havoc on bad teams. They've done that over the years, and they're going to beat enough good teams to stay at the top. That's just the way they do things. That's the way they've done things the last couple of years. But are they number 2 team in the country? No. My whole point with Virginia and Villanova is that they've managed to do what a lot of teams haven't done is be consistent. You beat the teams that are in front of you, regardless of whether they're home, away, bad or good, whatever, right? That's really all you can do. And that's what they've done, except Villanova's done it in a more dominant fashion. We know Villanova's a better team, and we went into this year knowing Villanova's a better team. So we'll see how it goes. But right now, I think, it's becoming, if we go a couple more weeks and Villanova's still sitting here with 2 or less losses, then I think it's far and away a case of who else is going to be up there with them. Because they're going to be, we know they're going to be a 1 seed. And we know that they're, how high of a 1 seed they're going to be. Would they be the number 1 overall? Would they be the second number 1? That's pretty much what you're looking at because they're going to be the number 1 or the second overall number 1. So, again, let's see what Virginia can do as their schedule tightens up. If they can beat a couple more really good teams, then maybe we start to buy into, even with their style of play, which is not conducive to the NCAA tournament. Maybe they'll prove something to us, and maybe they are that team that can be up there with Villanova. But as of right now, I don't think it. I think if you look at it, there's Villanova is on such a different plane than Virginia, and so many of the other teams. It's not even fair at this point. Duke might very well ascend to that level. Duke might very well ascend to that level. They're the only ones I think that can. I don't think Kansas is good enough. Kentucky's clearly not good enough. North Carolina's clearly not good enough. Duke's the only one that can. They're not as deep as Villanova, but they can ascend to that kind of level even what they have. But they have a ways. They got to get better on defense before they get to that point. They're starting to, but we'll see if they get to that level. But as it stands right now, Villanova and Virginia have managed to just get the job done. Where a lot of teams have, and again, they've had struggles, whether it's on the road or at home, and they've fallen into streak. Doesn't mean they're bad teams. There's a lot of good teams this year. It just means that they've Villanova and Virginia have kind of worked around the potholes, so to speak. So, all right. So we'll see how this week goes in college basketball, and we'll obviously look back on it next week. Now, a little bit of wrestling, not a lot, because there isn't a lot to talk about. This tonight's SmackDown was fairly uneventful, except for the main event, which featured, spoiler alert, a new U.S. champion. They decided to rush this tournament, which is an odd change of plans. It was supposed to go to the Rumble, and then they all of a sudden played the semifinals and the championship all in one night. So I don't know what their plan is, what the deal with the Ziggler thing is. I thought they're going to play it up to WrestleMania, but they're rushing it, so it makes me think they're going to play it at the Rumble. We'll see. But the new U.S. champion is Bobby Roode. He beat Jinder Mahal tonight. They had a big coronation, Daniel Bryan, Shane McMahon, everything. So, Roode's finally had kind of a moment here. And what will probably be a bigger moment later with Ziggler, I'd imagine. But still, he had a moment here. And they had a good match there. And that was really the whole thing, the whole highlight of SmackDown. Obviously, they kind of worked. Maybe their plans changed because they didn't want to, they've been doing a lot of AJ Styles, Sami Zayn, Kevin Owens over the last couple of weeks. Want to mix it up a little bit. Also, Kevin Owens has a minor injury, so maybe they wanted to work around that and not use him much tonight. But clearly, the U.S. title stuff really just filled up SmackDown tonight, largely. And then you had a couple other things, but that was really the highlight. There was nothing else really big that went on. And Raw last night was pretty uneventful. Other than the Strowman stuff, which I thought they should have played out beyond the first hour. It was gold and it was entertaining, but they kind of ended it in the first hour. Outside of that, the range match wasn't bad. And the main event, which the big shock was Seth Rollins using the curb stomp, which was a big source of discussion today. And then they had the odd ending with Finn Balor, which made you think that he was either injured or there was supposed to be a point to that. But so it was a good main event. The women's stuff, they kind of continued to build with Sonya Deville beating Sasha Banks and excuse me. Asuka had the match with Nia Jax, which was a good match there, but again, it was the stories were Braun Strowman at the beginning, and then the Seth Rollins Finn Balor stuff at the end, really. So I mean, there really wasn't a whole lot. I mean, I think we're kind of, this week was all about just getting to next week, because obviously next week got Raw 25, which they had a special last night, which was entered pretty good, and next week you got all these legends. They announced Trish Stratus tonight, which is cool. But yeah, you got the Raw 25 next week, go home show before the Rumble, and then SmackDown next week. That'll be the go home show for them. And I think they've done enough build up. They've had 2 months to build up, so I think they're just kind of ready just to get to next week and get beyond here. So, Mike, any Raw or SmackDown thoughts?
Also missed the fact that tonight was the first match of the Mixed Match Challenge that streamed on Facebook. Yep. A surprising first round match was Finn Balor and Sasha Banks versus Shinsuke Nakamura and Natalya. I'm glad we didn't predict this, because if I had to guess, I would have said that Nakamura and Natalya would have won. No. Balor and Sasha Banks beat Finn Balor and Sasha Banks beat Nakamura and Natalya by submission when Sasha tapped out Natalya. And they get to they fight the winner of the next match, next week, which is Big E and Carmella and Asuka. So I don't think that Big E and Carmella are winning that match. So we're looking at in the quarterfinals Balor and Sasha versus Miz and Asuka. It's Raw. And like, go the next week, Roman and Bliss versus Sin Becky Lynch. Are you really going to have, because if you're going to do this in the Raw versus SmackDown, they're going to have Strowman and Bliss lose? Strowman brought down the entire set. He flipped a tractor trailer on Monday. You're going to have Braun Strowman lose to Sami Zayn again? No, you're not. And then you got Jimmy Uso and Naomi and Goldust and Alicia Fox. Obviously, you can predict that one. Rusev and Lana versus Elias and Bayley. The last one, Apollo Crews and Nia Jax versus Bobby Roode and Charlotte Flair. Charlotte Flair and Bobby Roode are going to win that one.
Right.
I feel like they're building towards, and it's because it's really similar. They're really similar teams. It's almost like they're building towards Nakamura. It's almost seems they're building towards Roode and Charlotte. This is an Asuka. If you think about it, it's kind of interesting. By that time, Miz is going to be Intercontinental Champion again. So it'd be the Intercontinental Champion versus the United States Champion. The undefeated Asuka versus the unparalleled genius of Charlotte Flair. Interesting. But otherwise, like, Mixed Match Challenge could be really interesting. As for Raw, Raw wasn't super interesting. Braun Strowman murdering everybody was great. Obviously, the entire internet and everybody in the know was secretly hoping for Braun Strowman to get his hands on Kevin Dunn. And when he was in that truck, he really wanted to get his hands on Kevin. We really wanted Braun to get his hands on Kevin Dunn and maybe like throw him through a truck. That would have been fantastic. But obviously, Braun Strowman just flipped the truck. So, everybody, he flipped the truck again because he was upset. I feel like they should have kept that one going all night, but I guess they couldn't because they had to do the big angle at the end of the night. Excuse me. Asuka. It was interesting. I thought they would just go with the And I don't understand still why they didn't go with the countout, but they decided like Nia Jax can't continue, so the winner by essentially TKO was Asuka. Asuka's undefeated streak continues. She was never going to lose it to Nia Jax. She's now like 15-0 against Nia Jax. Booker T's commentary still doesn't make any fucking sense. By the way, moment of the night, Brian, last night. Bringing an ambulance and the curb stomp.
Yeah.
Booker T sacrificing Michael Cole to Braun Strowman. Moment of the night. He's like, oh, fuck you, Cole. You get beat up by Braun Strowman. Shucky ducky, quack, quack. And then Michael Cole got chucked by Braun. The night, we kind of just highlighted it. Finn Balor technically beat Seth Rollins last night. Because they showed it and they're like, oh, yeah, Finn Balor pinned Seth Rollins for 3.5. So they could kind of say, yeah, Finn did beat Seth. And the bar came out because the world needs more Sheamus and Cesaro. Active life. And then we got Jason Jordan trips Jason Jordan trips Finn Balor. And that leads into the return of the curb stomp or the blackout. It depends on who you're listening to. Excuse me. So, curb stomp. We didn't think that Seth Rollins was allowed to use that move anymore. Apparently, something must have changed backstage. Apparently, and you can kind of see it. Everybody is interested and reinvigorated with Seth Rollins. Seth Rollins again. Rollins is great, but it's like, oh, Rollins got his finisher back. Wow, this seems pretty normal. Rollins got the curb stomp back. It's good for Seth. It's good for Seth. I'm yawning. That one, though, AJ Styles, champion everybody likes, gave one of the all-time worst promos in the history of wrestling.
Oh,
AJ Styles. Yeah.
I
Wait. Vince McMahon thinks Kevin Owens is fat. Ha ha ha! Because whatever he told AJ Styles to say, he certainly said it. Kevin Owens. I think Team Sammy and Kevin is 3 people. And bear with me here, people. Kevin Owens, I count as 2 guys because he's fat. So funny. Why aren't you laughing, Renee? Because the joke is stupid, AJ. Oh, did not like when AJ Styles said that. Then he calls him Team Cammy. Sammy and Kevin. Kevin and Sammy. Team Cammy. He's trying to say that it's a girl's name. He's using it. He's like, oh, Cammy's a girl's name, so I'm going to call him that. And that's an insult. Cammy or Kami means Japan in Japanese, where AJ Styles wrestled for 2 years.
Yeah.
It means God. So he just called Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens. Way to have a backfired. I don't know if Owens and Zayn were on the show. But they had a highlight package.
Yeah, there was a highlight package. I don't think they were on the show. I think there was just a highlight package. But yeah, I mean, like I said, it wasn't. Again, I think they're just pretty much ready to just go get onto the Rumble at this point. So
especially SmackDown, and especially, you know what, SmackDown was bleeding for content. I don't know why you rushed the U.S. title tournament, especially since Rude versus Ziggler essentially is your essentially your WrestleMania match. Why would you blow it that quick?
I don't know. Maybe they have different plans. I have no. I'm shocked that they rushed it tonight like they did.
They rushed it tonight too, because if you're doing it tonight, it would kind of hint that maybe Jinder wins it. Or at least Xavier Woods, because they rushed both those matches because they were only supposed to have one match tonight.
Yeah.
Versus it's only supposed to be Jinder versus Woods. And then next week was Rude versus Mojo. And apparently that match wasn't bad either. So take it as you will.
Yeah.
So they're rushing it. Something's going to happen. Said SmackDown and Raw both existed. And then Finn Balor and Sasha surprisingly win their mixed match challenge match. Would not have called it if I tried.
I think there's far more interesting stuff going on, behind the scenes, because we've had the Paige stuff for her with the talk that her career is over, in-ring career is over, which apparently she's in denial about. WWE announced several signings today, including War Machine, Ricochet, which we knew about. Those names are going to be coming, along with Candice LeRae, who's Johnny Gargano's wife, I believe, right?
Yes, Candice LeRae is Johnny Gargano's wife. She also wrestled in the Mae Young Classic.
And those are three names that were talked about for months as far as coming, so those aren't surprising. And then there's talk that they'll bring in some Impact wrestlers that have been released, including Bobby Lashley, who was with the WWE before, and Ethan Carter III, who was also with the WWE before. There's even talk that EC3 and Ricochet will be in the Rumble in a couple weeks. Bobby Lashley cannot be in the Rumble because he won't be able to be signed to February 1st, I believe. But so, and also it hasn't been confirmed by anybody, but it's being reported by a number of places that Ronda Rousey has signed with WWE officially. So it was said earlier in the week that there'd be a lot of announcements as far as new talent, and here we are. So lots of talent here, and obviously I think a lot of them will get Ricochet, and if Lashley comes out and Ethan Carter III will probably be on the main roster pretty quick.
Yeah, that was the other big piece of news today. Like Ethan Carter III and Lashley are full and interested.
Yeah, and I think they'll be on the main roster quick. I think Candice still take their time with an NXT. And Ricochet will probably be, and War Machine will be down in NXT too. But I think Ricochet will be on the main roster, and I think that Lashley and Ethan Carter III will probably go right up to the main roster, probably too, when they get there. Because I think they're going to sign them. I don't think that's going to be even a thing. So that's interesting news. And Ronda will obviously be on the main roster when she debuts. There's some people saying that it's only going to be a one-match thing. I don't think that's the case at all. But there's some talk about that. If it's one match and she's facing Stephanie and that's it. Because there's no way to do anything else. But so that's interesting. And then there's the report, which I think is interesting. It's a much ado about nothing because it's not gonna be an issue. But it was reported today that Chris Jericho hasn't even signed a deal to appear on Raw next Monday.
Mm-hmm.
So it's apparently he's gonna do it, but they kind of promoted him without officially signing a deal, which I think is kind of funny. I mean, they know that he's gonna do it, but it's still kind of funny. So, But yeah, I know. But so lots of interesting things. Plus, if you've been following the Royal Rumble betting odds, which I'm sure a lot of people do, because the betting odds have oftentimes predicted things, including last year's Rumble. Shinsuke Nakamura is now the new favorite. He has ascended to the top. Reigns is second. Cena is third along with Ziggler, but somebody in the last 24 hours has gained significantly into the top four, and that's Braun Strowman.
Things that make you go,
Now, granted, I'm going to say this. That might be, I don't know if that's really smart money. I think that might be a lot of people after last night going, well, geez, the way they're booking him, So I don't read too much into it unless it keeps happening all week and into next week. If that's what happens, and it moves to the top two spots, then I'm more inclined to believe it's not just people doing, throwing money in there or, throwing their weight behind him because of booking. It's more they know something. You know what I mean? So we'll see how much that sustains throughout the week. If he continues to ascend and gets up there with Reigns and Nakamura, then I think it's a fair, and then, and of course, if we see the odds for the triple threat match and we see that Strowman's going to lose that match, then I think in him gaining in the Royal Rumble odds, I think it would be safe to assume that he could win it. So, we'll see what happens over the next 7 days or so. But after last night, a lot of people clearly just jumped on him because of the booking. I don't want to read too much into it yet, but it was a pretty big jump. So we'll see what materializes because of that. But yeah, so it should be interesting. I mean, next week, Raw 25 and SmackDown, it should be very interesting to see what happens. No doubt we'll have a lot to talk about with the legends and everything else. So, all right. So before my voice completely gives out, because it's getting there, let me wind down. We got through everything. So we're done for tonight. As always, the show might be over. It's not mean you have to stop interacting, contributing to the show. Continue to have your voice heard. Send us your feedback, your questions about the show and the scheduling of the show, topic ideas or breaking news items related to sports, entertainment, or wrestling that you want us to cover. Questions about the again, reactions, comments, opinions, and if we talk about the show. Breaking news items related to sports, entertainment, wrestling you want us to cover. Remember, anything to do with the film awards, you can ask questions by email, Facebook, and Twitter. But remember, submissions can be done by email only. That means live voted nomination submissions as well as winning ballots can only be submitted by email only. So please remember that. Remember, your deadline for that is next Thursday. It's next Thursday, next Tuesday. No, next Thursday. So keep that in mind. So again, email address for the show, itspotlight411@gmail.com. You can, again, follow us on Twitter at itspotlight411. Please remember to use the hashtag itspotlight411 for anything people got on the show. And again, on Facebook, you can find us just by searching for In the Spotlight 401, and make sure that you like our page once you find it. And then you can follow us on Facebook and Twitter, which is very important. You want to follow us on Facebook and Twitter so you can have access to all the latest developments about the show when it comes to scheduling or questions about the show. You want to ask us any questions, or of course, just generally follow us on any of the random thoughts and stuff we post on our social media feed. So make sure that you follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Again, search for us on Twitter at itspotlight401. And remember, use the hashtag In the Spotlight 401. Of course, again, on Facebook, search for In the Spotlight 401 and make sure that you like our fan page so you can follow us. You want to follow us on Facebook and Twitter. It's what you want to do. That's how you get the information about the show and all that kind of good stuff. So make sure that you do all that. 2 ways to keep up with the show and look back at classic episodes. You can hear stream us anytime on Google Plus and YouTube. Just search for In the Spotlight 411. And when you do, you'll be taken to our show page on both sites where you'll be able to stream any of our episodes that we've ever produced for Google Plus and YouTube. It's every episode from mid-October 2015 all the way up to tonight's current episode. Those episodes are available for you to stream anytime you want. Just check us out on Google Plus and YouTube and search for In the Spotlight 401 to be able to do that. If streaming's not your thing, maybe you prefer to listen to us. Maybe listen to us on the go. Maybe you just don't like seeing us on screen. Maybe you prefer to, again, not see us, but listen to us, or maybe interested in older episodes of the show. If any of that applies to you, check us out on our main host sites, Podbean and iTunes, to search for In the Spotlight 411. When you do, you'll be taking our show page on both sites where you'll find every episode we've ever produced in nearly 8 years been doing the show. About 7.5 years been doing the show. My dog's barking, so pardon me. So you'll find every episode for our original Blog Talk Radio run from October 2010 to January 2011, all of our Talk Shoe episodes from January 2011 all the way up to mid-October 2015, and all of our Google Plus and YouTube episodes from mid-October 2015 all the way up to tonight's current episode, transfer into audio format for your convenience. Every episode we've ever done in order from most recent to the oldest, all in audio format for you to listen to anytime you want. Whether you want to listen to on the go, catch up on current episodes, recent episodes, miss part of an episode, want to listen to an episode again. Maybe somebody wants to look back at an episode from way back when, 4 or 5 years ago, or maybe you're a new fan and wants to look back at old episodes for the first time. Maybe you never saw them before, heard them before, or want to see what they're all about. You can do all that and more on our main host sites, Podbean, iTunes. Again, just search In the Spotlight 411. So Google Plus, YouTube, Podbean, iTunes. Your ways to give it the show and look back at classic episodes. Again, Google Plus, YouTube, Podbean, iTunes. Your ways to give it the show and look back at classic episodes. Again, just search for us on all those sites under the title In the Spotlight 411. Again, In the Spotlight 411 is what you want to search for on all of those sites to be able to have access to those resources. I want to thank Mike for being here tonight. Thank you, Mike.
It is time for bed. Dead air. Okay, I can finish this. And allow me to pat myself on the back for another job well done. There we go. I'm patting. Do you hear me patting? I'm patting. All right, this is Brian Gardner saying, I'm out. The spotlight's off. Good night, everybody. Spotlight. There, I did it. You're welcome.
Okay, sorry about that. If I didn't do that, the dog would have been barking the entire time I'm trying to finish. So I tried to rush it and get it in, but oh well. All right. Well, of course, I want to thank myself and our great show, pat myself on my back, and thank all of you for your continued support and contributions to the show. Thank you so much for watching. To those that'll be watching or listening to this later, thank you to you as well. Again, sorry about that. It was better to do that than just kind of finish up everything and then have her barking, because she was getting to the point where she was going to bark and wake everybody else up. So she held out most of the show. What can you do? Live podcasting, folks, you get interruptions. That's the way it goes. So, all right. So that's done. That is it for tonight. Again, we'll have another show on Thursday. That'll be our entertainment show, box office beat, TV highlights, film picks. We'll talk some Golden Globes. We didn't get the chance to do that last week. We'll do that this week. Do some Critics' Choice. We'll do that, and maybe something else too. Again, if time permitting. It depends how I feel. That will be on Thursday, and then next week, again, Tuesday, we got a combo show, sports and entertainment. We'll do our usual stuff. And then next Thursday, all wrestling show previewing the Royal Rumble pay-per-view. So if you have any questions or comments you'd like to submit before the show, and of course, obviously during the show next Thursday, you can do that by email, Facebook, and Twitter, either before or during the show next Thursday. So make sure you keep that in mind. And the week after that, we got the Film Awards. So basically a couple weeks here. And in February, we'll see what the schedule will entail. We'll see what we do. Again, I got some decisions to make, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. So with that being said, that is it for tonight. Again, thank you for your patience with I know the quality wasn't that good and my voice and everything, but we may do. And with the distractions at the end, I apologize for that. But again, you got pets and stuff. That's what happens. So I hope you all have a great rest of your night, a great Wednesday, and a great Thursday. We'll see you back here for our second show of the week this coming Thursday. That's January the 18th. Broadcasting and streaming live here on YouTube at 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time. Until then, have a good night, everybody. See you on Thursday.